Hello, we're at the Art Center in Corvallis. My name is Hester Koeke. I am the curator. And we're talking about our current exhibit, Where Are We? It is a show about landscape. Landscape is a favorite art form in the Northwest, and with good reason. Our environment is so beautiful that landscape painting is what we should say a no-brainer to have here. Many artists live here because the landscape is so beautiful. A landscape painting in your living room is also a point of beauty and something to look at and feel placed in that landscape again. But there is a certain repetition that we see. It's, a faraway vista, a tree, a house, a mountain. For an art gallery to show that type of landscape over and over again, at a certain point gets limited. So when we envisioned this exhibit, Where Are We? We invited 3 women artists who are in some way working with landscape. Nancy Helmsworth from Portland set herself some ground rules. And she started with a square format, put in that a smaller landscape, and then made all kinds of constructions around it. All the pieces in the middle start with a fairly traditional landscape view, in this case, a big rock in the desert. But then she fills up the rest of the plain with entirely different things. This is actually leftover building fragments and not necessarily seen from the right viewpoint. And then she has these lines straight through the entire painting. And you will see that in the other paintings from the left and to the right as well. They're fragmented. So she starts with these landscapes and then pushes it in different directions. Another painter that is in this exhibit, Where Are We?, is Rebecca Mannheimer. She is from Eugene, and her source of inspiration really is the landscape in the Willamette Valley. And when we look at this painting, that is very clear. We see trees. But if we look at the painting more closely, there are elements that are not so clear anymore. What is this background? What are those little shapes there? Is this a cemetery? Or are these just little bits and pieces of other trees? We just don't know. And when we look at one of her other paintings in the same show with the same sort of inspiration, you can see that her shapes are very much more abstracted and very much more removed from what we would call a traditional landscape. The work by Jill Baker, an artist from Corvallis, is the least expected what we would think of when we're thinking about a landscape show. What is important to her is the moment itself, the small actions she performs when she is in the landscape. And then she documents that or thinks about it after she comes home, looking at her rudimentary sketches, creating work that has to do with the being in the landscape. That is the best way to explain it. The experience is more important than the artifact. When she gave this to the installers decided how close, in what sequence, and how high up, and all that kind of decision-making that an artist tends to do themselves, because for her it isn't that important that she does that, but that it gets completed by yet another person, the interpretation of what she created as a reaction to her experience in the landscape. So her work has a very conceptual approach, which is as far removed from the traditional landscape painting as we could get. If you want to know more about her, look at the Art Center's YouTube channel, where she has an interview and talks about her work at length. And then here we are in front of a wall that has work by all three artists. Here we see a piece by Jill Baker and a couple by Rebecca Mannheimer and Nancy Helmsworth. We see here again a small piece of landscape combined with a scarf and again some lines. When we look at Rebecca's work, these pieces are much more abstracted than the previous ones we saw. They're hardly recognizable as we see a tree, we see a mountain, we see a house. There's still hints to it, but not necessarily that. It could be anything. It could be a weird shape. It could be an interesting shape. I encourage you to come and see this show, Where Are We?, about reinterpreted landscape. It is up through February 1st. We're open Tuesday through Saturday from 12 to 5 p.m. I also invite you to come to the CA, the Corvallis Art Walk, on the 18th from 4 to 8 p.m. and most certainly to the Brown Bag discussion at noon, where artists will talk about their work. Hope to see you then.